When you make a decision to fire a gun in self-defense, if there's an attempt to hold you accountable because someone was hurt or killed by your bullet, you cannot get a jury of your peers, and this puts your life at risk. Stay with me and I'll explain exactly why this is. This is why, although I love guns and support the Second Amendment 100%, I don't believe that most people should have them for self-defense purposes. And I take a ton of heat for that. I get sick of hearing about the right to own guns, and that right alone should trump any other considerations about carrying or using a firearm for defensive purposes. And the bottom line, this is really true. The problem is that there are many people who have lost their lives. In this case, I mean that figuratively, due to either bad decisions in highly stressful circumstances that led to injury or death of another, or decisions that, even if they weren't truly bad, are seen as bad by others, particularly those who are responsible for deciding your fate, like law enforcement, prosecutors, judges, juries. And when I say lost their lives, I mean that they are either behind bars or they've lost everything to defend themselves, even if they were ultimately acquitted. Consider this. If there's an attempt to hold you accountable for someone getting hurt or killed by your bullet, you will never get a jury of your peers. It's impossible. Why? Because unless everyone on your jury has used a firearm in self-defense, they are not true peers. They cannot in any way understand what you experienced. What you will get are people who can only imagine the circumstances, and far too many will never be able to imagine what you were dealing with. And in many cases, they have no desire at all to imagine anything other than holding another gun owner accountable for a statistic that supports their stance on banning guns. In fact, there are some elements of incidents that are almost impossible for another to understand without seeing it for themselves, combined with an ability to feel and react under the fear and panic that would only exist in the moment. The result when they can't do that, because it's impossible, you are convicted. I know I'll get the garbage. I'd rather be tried by 12 than carried by 6. And if that's the way you feel, then blessings to you. And hopefully you will never be put in a position that jeopardizes your well being. Here's the deal. Without a ton, and I mean a ton of training, and not just shooting under perfect conditions at the range, and shooting at minimum 1 time per week, you're putting yourself and your family at risk of the consequences of bad decisions and errant bullets. Is it worth it? Maybe. If you carry a firearm, just do so understanding that there's another side to consider and only after you've weighed all of the risks. One more thing. The reason so many people carry and own firearms for protection and do so without any or very little training is because number one, they think that an encounter is always going to be at can't miss distances that don't require skill, which is very, very wrong. You can miss man sized targets at 2 feet away under panic, fear, and chaotic circumstances. And or number two, although they carry a firearm, they don't truly think anything will ever really happen to them. Look, what I'm saying has nothing to do with rights. The problem is that sometimes your right to do something can result in consequences that are very, very negative. A right to possess and use firearms for self-defense has nothing to do with being cautious about what you do with that right. For example, you have a right to drive a car, but you will suffer consequences if you make a mistake with that right, and that mistake or carelessness causes another injury or death. The right itself is not a blanket pass to do whatever you want with it. My company's in the business of protecting people from physical harm and liability. In order to do this successfully, you need to understand all of the risks that go with carrying a firearm. I'm only trying to help you make good, fully informed decisions. Unfortunately, most, and I mean most people, do not have the training and experience to ensure the highest likelihood of good decisions and controlled bullets. And think about this. There are many, many people who wish that they had not had a firearm on them during their incident because they did something stupid without even realizing it and concluded that the firearm only played a role because it was there for them to use but wasn't actually needed. Remember this. It doesn't always take a firearm to stop a firearm. See you next time.